May I request Mr. Ramachandran to kindly resume the session proceedings, sir. Over to you, sir.
Namaskar, madam. Welcome to the session on nodes of maritime connectivity. On behalf of the organizers, I have great pleasure in welcoming the Honorable Union Finance Minister to this session. We will continue this session. We had 3 speakers earlier, and now we will have the 4th speaker. Ms. Sarah Storey, Deputy High Commissioner to India, Australian High Commission, will speak to us on maritime connectivity in the Oceania region, which is part of the Indo-Pacific. I now request Ms. Storey to take the mic. Thank you.
Namaskar, Namaste, good morning. Honourable Minister, Secretary, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. I'm thrilled to be here to talk about maritime connectivity in the Indo-Pacific. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the outstanding work of the National Maritime Foundation in pulling together another excellent event. It's something the Australian High Commission looks forward to every year, and in fact we also have a visiting senior officer from Australia this year, Captain Al Cooper, the director of the Sea Power Centre, who successfully ran our Sea Power conference last week. Captain Cooper, could you raise your hand so we know where you are? There you are. There is value in today's discussion in bringing together industry voices to engage with government and identify how to strengthen regulatory frameworks to drive prosperity and sustainability for our oceans. I want to start today's discussion with some framing comments on the larger Indo-Pacific maritime context and offer thoughts on how today's seminar feeds into the bigger picture. Many of us have said that the Indo-Pacific has a rather undefined scope. That is true to a degree, so I'd like to offer you all a uniquely Australian definition that is rooted in geography and perspective. Australia is a 3-ocean nation. We have the Pacific Ocean to our east, hence Secretary mentioning our focus on Oceania, the Indian Ocean to our west, and while we're often eclipsed by the enormity of the Pacific and Indian Oceans that lap our shores, Australia's sizable Antarctic territory also means that we have a long-standing and enduring interest in the Southern Ocean. Australia is both an island country and a standalone continent. Oceans are fundamentally what define our place in the world, and it is our unique geographical position at the fulcrum of the Pacific and Indian Oceans that made Australia one of the early adopters of the term Indo-Pacific. Australia's 2013 Defence White Paper brought the term into our official lexicon, defining the Indo-Pacific as a strategic arc that connects the Indian and Pacific Oceans throughout Southeast Asia. It is right to acknowledge the Indian Ocean has not always received the same level of attention in Australia's strategic thinking as the Pacific Ocean. Historically, Australia has tended to see itself as a Pacific Ocean state. It was not until 1987 that Australia adopted a 2-ocean naval policy, prompting a significant reposturing of Australian forces to our west. Today, up to half of our naval fleet is based permanently in Western Australia, including all 6 of the Collins-class submarines. Our equities in the Indian Ocean are clear. Approximately 42% of our exports by value depart from Western Australian ports. Our exclusive economic zone extends deep into the Indian Ocean, containing the strategically valuable territories of Christmas and Cocos Keeling Islands. The Indian Ocean is home to 5 of Australia's top 15 trading partners, India foremost, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore and Thailand. Many things connect Australia and India. One of them is that we share an ocean home, the Indo-Pacific. That home is very much changing in character. It is the world's strategic centre of gravity. It is where many of the world's economic opportunities lie, but it's also the focal point of sharpening competing interests and potential instability. We have entered into a decisive decade, one that holds considerable promise for the Indo-Pacific, but there will be challenges too. The Indo-Pacific is witnessing an unprecedented big military modernisation and expansion over the biggest it has seen in the last 80 years. China's defence budget eclipses the next 17 highest spending countries in the Indo-Pacific combined. The PLA Navy has more than doubled its fleet of principal combatants in a decade, a 101% increase in just 10 years. Competition between great powers is escalating and rules are threatened and undermined. We see that very much with our own eyes in the South China Sea, in the Pacific, and of course in India's own backyard. In response to our changing strategic environment, it has never been more important for Australia to employ sober, responsible and clear-eyed statecraft. This involves a generational reinvestment in the size, capability and structure of the Australian Defence Force. We will acquire long-range strike systems, manufacture guided munitions and upgrade critical air bases across northern Australia. Through our AUKUS partnership between Australia, UK and the United States, we will acquire nuclear power submarines, the biggest single investment in Australia's defence capability. But deterrence involves all aspects of statecraft. Our statecraft now requires a consistent and coordinated whole-of-government approach to international affairs and the harmonisation of a range of domestic and external national security portfolios, from trade to investment, to education, minerals and resources, clean energy, climate, industry, infrastructure and more. Our whole-of-government policies work together to make Australia's contribution to the strategic balance of power that keeps the peace in our region. A balance where the strategic reassurance through diplomacy is underwritten by military deterrence. I would assure you all today that Australia, as we increase our defence spending and we grow our military capability, we will do so in a way that is both predictable and transparent. On India-Australia maritime domain awareness, I'm sure there will be many Indo-Pacific nations here today who are concerned about the trajectory of our region. Whether it be illegal and unregulated fishing, pollution, illegal exploitation of lawfully recognised resources, maritime crime, or vulnerable maritime trade. Despite our differing priorities, we all share the same concerns and we want the same end state: a peaceful, prosperous and stable region for all, one that is guaranteed by adherence to international law, where no state is dominated and no state dominates. Maritime trade vulnerabilities complicate these factors, as we all saw so starkly during the COVID-19 crisis. Australia's unique geography and economy highlighted specific trade vulnerabilities, including our displacement from major shipping lanes, reliance of over 90% of our consumables being imported, mainly by sea, and the reduction of our manufacturing capabilities as we had reoriented our economy. Australia's connection to the world and financial markets is what sustains our imports and exports. Undersea cables provide real-time access to markets across the globe. Sea lanes and undersea cables are the thriving arteries and veins that supply the heart of Australia, our livelihood. They are our economic connection to the world, and they are also our vulnerability. Maritime domain awareness and maritime security is an enormous task. No one nation can do it alone. Threats to the Indian Ocean span from terrorism, piracy, trafficking, illegal and unregulated fishing and poaching. The challenge is simply immense. That makes coordination towards common goals imperative and more critical than ever. That's why Australia values India's natural leadership in shaping the strategic environment of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. India and Australia have significant Indian Ocean coastlines, strategic island territories, highly capable military reach, and valuable trade routes. We are stewards of global maritime resources, and we want to preserve the freedom of navigation and commerce and the marine environment for generations to come. Strengthening our respective maritime domain awareness initiatives is a core focus of the Australian High Commission in India. Our reciprocal maritime patrol aircraft deployments are an example of where strategic trust has enabled us to take a significant step forward. I was absolutely delighted to participate twice in these important maritime surveillance missions aboard one of our P-8 aircraft in Goa last year and this year in Tamil Nadu. In fact, last year, when our Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence, Richard Marles, who we shall expect to see in Delhi very soon, when he visited India last May, the fine men and women of the Indian Navy flew him from Goa to Delhi in a P-8 aircraft, a true symbol of our maritime domain awareness cooperation. And just this March, our Prime Minister was honoured to be the first foreign leader welcomed and invited aboard India's brilliantly indigenously designed and manufactured INS Vikrant. Our maritime cooperation sends an important message to the region. Australia and India and our partners will work together to protect vulnerable maritime choke points, and we will look to shape positively the strategic trajectory of the Indo-Pacific. We will work together always to preserve maritime connectivity in the Indo-Pacific. There is, of course, a more practical element. Our P-8 cooperation is an excellent way to maximise our resources, aided by robust new frameworks such as our Mutual Logistics Support Agreement. We've achieved a number of firsts in the Australia-India maritime relationship this year, all of which support our shared goal of maintaining a secure, open and free Indo-Pacific. An Indian Navy submarine visited Australia for the first time this year, setting a record for the distance it travelled across the Indian Ocean. Australia hosted Exercise Malabar in Sydney, and an Indian Navy Dornier aircraft operated from Cocos Keeling Island in support of our shared aim of utilising offshore territories. And of course, Australia remains a long-standing advocate and member of India's Information Fusion Centre for the Indian Ocean region. We have had a naval officer posted there since 2020 because it's only through working together to exchange information quickly and accurately that we can identify, track and stop threats to maritime security. Working with partners like India, Australia is investing our network of regional strategic partnerships. Countries that can best pool their resources and combine their strengths will have the decisive competitive advantage. To contest and prepare for the challenges ahead, we must utilise the full extent of our strategic toolkit of partnerships, alliances and groupings. And when I say this, it's more than words. It's backed up by practical action. As an example, for the first time this year, India, Australia and Indonesia conducted a PASEX. I hope to see more such trilateral cooperation because there is no stronger signal than 3 Indian Ocean partners working together to promote regional stability and economic prosperity. I want to acknowledge the valuable work that India has done in partnership with Australia in the Pacific. As Kiribati battled the COVID-19 pandemic, Australia organised a military flight to deliver India's donation of personal protective equipment and emergency medication. And as the Royal Australian Air Force delivered essential humanitarian supplies on behalf of the Indian government to Tonga following its devastating undersea volcanic eruption and tsunami. In these cases, it took all 3 nations working together to get the right aid to the right people in the right places at the right time. No small achievement in a disaster zone, only achievable through authentic communication and a commitment to real and positive outcomes on the ground. Most recently, of course, Prime Minister Modi ji hosted the 3rd Forum for Indo-Pacific Islands Cooperation Summit FIPIC in May in Papua New Guinea. India's commitment to deeper engagement in the Pacific is incredibly welcomed by Australia. Our 2 nations have complementary knowledge and strengths in partnering with small island nations. There is an obvious case for us to do more together to leverage that knowledge and experience. For Australia, our work in the Pacific means acting in line with fundamental principles emanating from the Boe Declaration. That is, the Pacific's security has to come from the Pacific family itself. the Bow Declaration, of course, being an outcome of the Pacific Islands Forum. The new treaty signed between Australia and Tuvalu last week has this principle at heart. It is a treaty that respects each other's sovereignty and commits us to support each other as we face the existential threat of climate change and geostrategic challenges. Australia will provide to Tuvalu in response to major natural disasters, health pandemic or military aggression. And it commits Australia to establish a special visa arrangement to allow Tuvaluans to come to Australia to live, work and study. This will help build a region that is peaceful, prosperous and resilient, where the sovereignty of nations large and small is respected and where the responsibility for Pacific security remains in the hands of the Pacific. In conclusion, the war in Ukraine reminds us that the sea is a source that sustains coastal states. Our national security for any of us is often determined by actions beyond our horizon, not on our shores. Ukraine is one of the world's largest producers of grains and exports over 90% of it to Africa, the Middle East and Europe via the sea. While Ukraine might seem far away to us here in Indo-Pacific, and likewise the Indo-Pacific may seem remote to many Europeans, what happens on the sea reverberates globally. The sea connects us and binds our fates. A key tenet of Australia's national defence security is our partnership. We will uphold our alliances and we will deepen our connections with our key partners. For us, partnership is the fulcrum of a prosperous maritime future. Thank you very much.